In 1929, the British enacted the Child Marriage Restraint Act, a law that was brought about to address the serious concerns and prevent the severe consequences of child marriages born out of an age-old culture in India. The said act was repealed and replaced by the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006, an act that provides for the prohibition of solemnization of child marriages. This highly pernicious practice is still not completely eradicated from our society. Hence, there is an urgent need to tackle this societal issue and to bring in further reforms.
To celebrate and commemorate the journey of 75 years of independence, Sansad TV has launched a unique series titled 75 Years Laws That Shaped India, deliberating various landmark laws that have been adopted during these golden years. This is your host Hemant Batra, back with another episode in that series. Today our focus will be on the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006. We cannot claim progress unless women progress on all fronts, including their social and economic conditions and physical, mental and reproductive health. This law that we are discussing today has a direct bearing on these aspects, as well as many others. To throw a meaningful light on this legislation, we have with us a very eminent guest in the studio. We have with us Lalitha Kumaramanglam. She's a well-known public policy commentator and former chairperson of the National Commission for Women. Welcome, Lalitha ji, to the studios.
Nice to be with you.
Thank you. Lalitha ji, let me start the discussion with a very basic question.
Okay.
Though the question sounds basic, but there is a lot of misinformation, confusion, and I would say even lack of understanding about that terminology. And the terminology is what the heading of the law is, child marriage. What constitutes child marriage? What is child marriage? Is it void ab initio or is it voidable? If it is voidable, can it be annulled or terminated once it has been solemnized?
First of all, legally, child marriage is, as the law act stands today, if you marry off your daughter or any young girl below the age of 18.
Right.
But what is the reason this law was brought in was because, as we know, patriarchy in India is so deep that children are married off at the age of, used to be married off, perhaps in some places even now, even below the age of 10. But even today, 15 से 18 साल की लड़की की शादी होनी कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है. Most parents don't want to spend money on their children's education, especially अगर घर में बेटा और बेटी दोनों हैं. तो you know, beginning from birth, even giving birth to a child, if it's a girl, if they know the sex, they still kill babies are aborted, etc. Right. That is fetuses. Right. And therefore, many parents feel कि नहीं आजकल समाज की जो स्थिति है, लड़की अगर प्यूबर्टी अटेन हो जाए 12-13 साल तक, तो उसको तो घर से निकलना ही मुश्किल हो जाता है. They will say there is a risk, they may be raped, they may be kidnapped, etc., etc. So many excuses are found, but they tend to marry their children off before the age of 18. Now this is illegal. Right. According to the law, it is illegal. Right. That is the act that we are talking about. Right. Now, the terms, voidable and void, they actually mean two different things.
Absolutely.
Void ab infinito means is the marriage itself right from the time, I mean, it happened.
It solemnizes.
It's void.
It's void. It's invalid.
It's invalid.
Right.
Under the law, marriage hi nahi hai. Voidable means that if, for example, the party who is the one who aggrieved party, in this case, it will be the young girl who got married. Right. If she says, ki, I was forced to get married, or the parents say that we were forced to marry her off, or any form of coercion, any form of मतलब जोर जबरदस्ती करके अगर उसकी शादी हुई है, then I'm told that under the law for 2 years, that is before she's 20, the girl or somebody on her behalf needs to go to court and say that this marriage was performed on because we were intimidated, coerced, blackmailed, threatened, वगैरह वगैरह. And then the court will say that, look, this marriage is invalid.
Right.
Now the point here is that in both cases, the girl who has been married, यहाँ पे हमारे देश में तो चट मंगड़ी पट शादी and then चट शादी पट बच्चा immediately. In a month they say, अच्छा, any happy news. It happens all over, regardless of economic and other status. आपको पता है. So what happens to the children is one of the questions that has not been addressed in the law. I think if you go to court, of course, if the lawyer is good enough and the girl has some amount of awareness, she will say, हाँ, मेरा बच्चा है, is that child legitimate, not legitimate? There are lots of questions.
Right.
And then suppose the girl, if she's married off before 18, obviously she's not that highly educated, etc. Nor will the family want to, take back a girl who will add to their economic burdens.
Right.
So what happens to the girl? हम कहते हैं maintenance. But as you know, it's not just in India, all over the world, under the laws, maintenance, तो the court will say, इतना दीजिए, ₹5 या ₹5,000 या ₹5,00,000, whatever in a month. But वो maintenance निकालना बहुत मुश्किल हो जाता है. So that is a different question. That's outside the ambit of this law.
But this law does mandate
it says maintenance. Yes.
Until the girl gets remarried. The responsibility falls on boys.
Yes, until the girl gets remarried. But it's very rare in India that, girls coming from a background where they were married off below the age of 18, or especially, say, below the age of 15, very backward families. I'm not talking merely about money. I'm talking about socially and culturally backward families, that girls would have been very highly educated.
This law is not gender neutral in that sense. But don't you think, because it says that even a male who is less than the age of 21, if he enters into marriage, that will also constitute child marriage.
It does, and sometimes I wonder, I mean, it seems personally, if you ask me, it seems a little strange. But under the law, you can't say that a law only applies to women and not to men.
Yes.
But this law initially was brought about not really to address the question of young men. It was more to address the question of young girls who are being married off.
Absolutely.
But even under the constitution, you can't say कि इस law का मतलब इस हिस्से में या इस law में only women are addressed, unless the law is specific to something like the pregnancy, etc. Things like that, which
and
men don't go
maintenance is only for a female.
But now I think there is maintenance, perhaps, that even some men ask for if the wife is the senior earner or the higher earner.
But a male can seek annulment. Yes, but no maintenance. This law, though it sounds as a civil law, but it has severe
criminal law.
It is a criminal law. It has criminal consequences. It has penal consequences as well. What punishments are prescribed if somebody?
Actually, if you ask me, the punishments are very light. I think they have imprisonment up to 2 years. And fine up to one year. It can be both together or either or. No, but this can also be levied on not just the people or the parents of the child who got the girl married off, but the priest, whoever helps whoever helps in actually seeing that the marriage was done. Including अगर आप बोलते हैं रिश्तेदार या जो आते हैं witnesses, etc.
So they are like abettors.
They can also be punished by the court.
So which is fairly.
Which is a good thing. It is a preventive provision. But you know how patriarchy runs. Patriarchy is so deep-rooted that the reporting of these cases is not really as much or as efficient, should I put it, as it should be. हर शादी का ऐसे report होना चाहिए. But कहाँ होती है? Maybe 10% are reported.
Why is that so? Is it that there is lack of sensitization, lack of awareness, lack of orientation, or perhaps lack of enforcement?
I think it's everything combined. Everybody has a mind, and the way they think in that mind is eventually how they act out. So regardless of whether you're a millionaire or a billionaire or a pauper, regardless of your caste, your creed, etc., how you think is how you are going to behave towards your daughters. Now, it would be unfair on my part to say that only a particular religion or a particular community does this more or less. You will find patriarchy is there even amongst women.
Absolutely.
There is a fallacy कि सिर्फ मर्द patriotic पितृसत्ता में डूबे हुए होते हैं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. बहुत सारी महिलाएं हैं There is a reason behind it saying...
Matriarchy is also
it's not matriarchy, it's patriarchy. Yeah, women who are patriarchal. But the fact is कि उनके behavior में या उनके decisions में या उनके कार्य में that patriarchy will always influence them very heavily.
Right.
So unless that is changed, the concept that girls are merely there to be married off and to have children and to be, you know, you're treated like an object.
Right.
Not somebody who can actually contribute to society, including your own family.
Absolutely.
As girls are getting better educated, going to work, slowly in those communities, regarding again regardless of caste, creed, etc., where education is greater, you will see that patriarchal, the way patriarchy के जो मतलब however patriarchy plays out, जो mindsets जो कहते हैं, बदलाव आता है और आया भी है.
So education is, you feel, one of the most important factors.
Yes.
Key factors.
Education, especially of the girls also.
Right.
And inclusion of girls in the workforce, all types of workforce. See, in India, most women work in the informal workforce, and they have no income parity, they have no income guarantees, they have no insurance, nothing. So it's the informal workforce. And in agriculture, most women who work in either agriculture or this. And in fact, both these lines of work are run by women. So you find that people think to protect the security of their children. Chalo, she's come of age around 12 to 15 roughly. Therefore, shadi kara do, she'll be protected. Ab ye bhi galat hai. We know what is going on in today's world when it comes to women's sexual harassment and, you know, murder, rape, all of this. But still, it's very difficult to change people's mindset. It's the mindset that we need to first change along with education.
Absolutely. But जैसे आपने proposition बताई कि you know 15-16 साल की बेटी हो गई तो चलो उसका विवाह कर दिया जाए. तो अगर कोई इस चीज को पॉइंट आउट नहीं करता कि ये चीज इम्प्रॉपर है या इमोरल है या ऑब्जेक्शनेबल है या इन सम वे अनलॉफुल है, मे नॉट बी होली, तो कोई एक्शन तो होगा नहीं, तो वो तो फिर एक वैलिड मैरिज बन के ही रह जाएगी इन दैट सेंस.
एक्चुअली जी सिर्फ पॉइंट आउट की बात नहीं है, इट हैज टू बी रिपोर्टेड. मतलब हमें रिपोर्ट ऑफिशियली रिपोर्ट करना है कि देखो, हाँ, टू द मजिस्ट्रेट कि देखो ये गलती हुई है, मतलब लीगल गलती हुई है.
कोई भी कर सकता है, वो कोई
भी कर सकता है. Any well-wisher can do it. But then the other issue is also there, that people like you and me who think that way में से चलिए हम तो कोई अच्छा काम करने के लिए जा रहे हैं, पर वो जो छोटी लड़की बेचारी है जिसकी शादी 12 साल या 15 साल में हो गई है, आप सोचिए कि वो शायद 1 साल के अंदर तो वो माँ बनी जाती है, उसकी क्या होगा, उसकी स्थिति क्या होगी, उसके बच्चे की क्या स्थिति है. एंड इन आवर कंट्री, इन मोस्ट कंट्रीज, नॉट जस्ट आवर कंट्री, शादी टूट गई, so the girl is again supposed to come back to her parents' family and they consider her a burden. So the parents also don't want to, you know, the marriage to be reported.
Right.
So this is one of the major reasons why itne marriages, matlab jo complaint aata hi nahi. So it's very tragic.
It is tragic.
That's why I'm saying that the mindset has to first change and girls must be educated.
Right. Well, child marriage also stands in the way of achieving sustainable development goals and goes against the principles enunciated under the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, to which India is a signatory. There is still much to discuss with our guest, but after a short break. See you soon on the other side of the break. Welcome back after the break. You're watching our special show where we are discussing a much talked about law, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006. We will jump into our discussion with the guest. But before that, let us have a quick look at the legislative journey of this law in Parliament.
The Prohibition of Child Marriage Bill 2006 was first introduced in Rajya Sabha on December 20, 2004. It was passed in Rajya Sabha on December 14, 2006 and in Lok Sabha on December 19, 2006. It received the assent of the President on January 10, 2007. The Act came into effect on November 1, 2007. Here are some of the brief extracts of the debates on the bill in Parliament.
I believe that the word child marriage is an oxymoron. You cannot have children and have a marriage because they both negate each other. Children are supposed to be having a childhood, and in childhood there is no place for marriage. Marriage is for an adult who will take the full responsibility of being a partner and spending a lifespan together with another individual.
बाल विवाह को सोचते हुए हमारी रूह कांपती है कि किस तरह से छोटी बच्ची 5 साल की, 10 साल की, 15 साल की बच्ची को जो उम्र उसके खेलने की है, पढ़ने लिखने की है, उसका शारीरिक विकास की है, उसका मेंटल विकास की है, उस समय में हम उसे एक धकेल देते हैं एक ऐसी अंधेरी कोठरी में जहां उसका जीवन हमेशा के लिए दफन होकर रह जाता है।
जिस ताकत के साथ ये बिल हमारे सामने आया है वो बहुत ही मैं उसका स्वागत करती हूँ, क्योंकि वास्तव में कई बार ये मन में विचार भी आता है कि लड़की की, ये भी आजकल एक विचार में आ रहा है कि लड़की की उम्र 18 साल है तो लड़के की 21 साल क्यों होना चाहिए। हमारे हिंदुस्तान में ये गृहस्थाश्रम की जो कल्पना रखी गई है, ये केवल कोई लड़का लड़की की शादी और उसके बाद में प्रजोत्पादन करना इतनी ही कल्पना नहीं है। इसको गृहस्थाश्रम एक आश्रम के रूप में लिया गया है कि जिसको संपूर्ण समाज को कहीं ना कहीं धारण करते हुए उसने चलना है। ये बहुत बड़ी कल्पना उसमें है।
Birth registration is important. Number 2, compulsory marriage registration. So that is again is not required under the law today. I think if you don't insist on registration of marriage compulsorily, the arrangement which will be privately entered, how will be able to prevent a child labor act? And therefore, compulsory birth, this and addition to that, sir, we already have amended the constitution to say that we want to make sure that there will be compulsory education at primary level.
Lalitha ji, continuing with our discussion.
Yeah.
The Prohibition of Child Marriage Bill 2021 has been much in news.
Yes.
It has already been introduced in the Parliament.
Yes.
And I understand that it has been referred to the Standing Committee for further examination. Now, it in sort of principle, or let's say predominantly, it raises the age or proposes to raise the age of women from 18 to 21 at par with men, insofar as conditions for marriage, valid marriage are concerned.
Yeah.
What is the background of this proposed amendment, and what are the objectives?
Okay. See, earlier, historically, by the age of 18, women would have finished school and had if they had wanted to be educated or the family wanted to educate them, a basic level of education. Today, 18, you're barely out of school. And many girls, as you know, drop out of school by the time they are 15. 8th standard के बाद थोड़ा उनका दिक्कत हो जाता है पढ़ाई continue करने में. So, one of the things that we see in child marriages across the board is that many of these girls would have liked to have studied further or kuch bhi banne ka, matlab to get out of the house, get a little freedom, because they have seen their mothers, their aunts, their sisters, their grandmothers, etc., friends, etc., go through the whole, like Renuka ji, we heard her on television in Parliament saying that it's a burden on a woman to get married so early. Because women are the ones who are dumped with all the responsibilities, especially that of bearing the child. Imagine a girl of 16. I mean, she's a girl, she's a little girl having a child, a child having another child. Think of also many other questions, the nutrition of the child. A child of 16 cannot produce a child as healthy as a woman of 25 perhaps. And India has a rampant thing of malnutrition. You know, remember that we have millions of children in this country who are still undernourished, malnourished and stunted. These are medical words, difficult to explain in this thing.
I read that in one of the international reports as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the younger the body is, you know, the body has to mature to be able to bear a child. Bearing a child is not a joke. 9 months you go through, the child is totally dependent on the mother's body. If the mother's body is not yet mature and healthy, how on earth will the child who's born going to be mature and healthy? And if you don't have children who are healthy, whose nutrition is 100% correct, you are going to be producing a generation of children who can never reach the full capacity of their brains.
Right.
Brain development maximum happens in utero, that is when the woman is pregnant, and for 2 years.
Right.
Actually, they say 18 months. The first 3 years we say now, 36 months from the time you're pregnant, 9 months, and then 2 years, 3 months. That's when 90% of the brain's development happens. So if you lack nutrition in the first few months, those 20 months or 24 months of your life, you will never be able to make that up, however healthy you are after that age. So this is something that also has to be taken into consideration. Patriarchy doesn't look at these things. They look at just the absolutes. कि लड़की 15 साल हो गई है, लोग क्या कहेंगे, इसकी सुरक्षा का क्या करेंगे, वगैरह वगैरह, and they marry her off.
Right.
The deeper psychological, physical, other, even mental, even societal,
and opportunities,
the ramifications. And remember that all of this also eventually has an economic fallout.
Right.
If you produce millions of undernourished children, what are they going to become when they become adults? They will never be adults who can contribute fully to the full of the entire capacity that they have in economics, whatever it is.
Right.
Chahe wo coolie ho, chahe wo CMD ho.
Right.
So all of this has to also be taken into consideration when you frame a law.
Right.
Generally, we don't think of it in so much detail. We think only of the legal aspects, but you also have to think of the socio-cultural and health, that is socio-cultural aspects where health, everything else is taken into concern.
Absolutely.
So this is also one of the most important aspects that has gone into this. You give women a fighting chance to be not only a productive individual, member of society, but to be a productive woman. Even as a mother, if that's what she chooses to become.
Absolutely.
There's no harm in a woman saying, मुझे घर के बाहर काम नहीं करना है, I want to run my house. अच्छा, आप मुझे एक बात बताइए. You have a wife, you have a daughter. You think you'll be able to run your life as well if your wife is not there to back you up at home? No. So the world stands literally on women's shoulders.
Yes.
That a woman means much more than just her gender.
Right.
These sort of things will happen. And that is why we want to increase it from 18 to 21. Many people will say it's going to be very difficult to enforce, which is true. But the fact is that all laws, all social laws, whether it was the anti-sati law or the Widow Remarriage Act, nobody wanted to accept it when that law came into force. Everybody had objections and said many objections were given, some of which were quite valid. Like maybe now some of the objections that come in may be quite reasonable. But that doesn't mean that you don't take that chance and give that opportunity.
Right. So moving on to my final question, and then we have a viewer's question as well. Getting into the statute once again, the government is represented in this statute by this child marriage officer.
Yes.
Child marriage prohibition officer. What is his role exactly? Because in 2018, Supreme Court had said that, yes, there is an officer appointed, but there are lack of guidelines for him to follow.
Not only lack of guidelines, there's also lack of training. They really don't know. The enforcers or the prohibitors, if you what you want to call them, they don't know the law themselves very well. Any law needs to be explained. Now, in Indian society, marriage is considered sacred, but under the law, marriage is a contract between two people. You know, that you promise each other that, you know, we are in a relationship or partnership. It is a legal partnership. It's like almost registering a country, a company.
Right.
Now, most marriages in India are not even registered.
Yes.
Even today. And therein lies a big problem under the law. If a marriage is not registered, where's the proof? Somebody some smart aleck turns around and says, Shadi to hui nahi hai, kahan proof hai? What do you do before the court? That's one question.
Because that is not compulsory, it's
That's
optional.
Not compulsory. So I actually think that one of the biggest jobs these people should have is to ensure that every marriage is actually registered.
Yes.
Yeah, and that they must find out, they must do due diligence, as you say in the legal language, and find out if something like this has happened or is happening. They have to definitely try their best to prevent it, because they have the backing of the law and the police, etc. They should be able to prevent it. And they should also make sure that they gather enough proof to go before court. The court doesn't look at sentimental issues. The court wants solid proof. Also, they must spread awareness about this problem, or the fact that doing this can make people get into problems. I think what we need to do is provide them the training and the orientation. The man who is the prohibition officer must believe that what he's doing is correct.
Absolutely.
ऐसा नहीं कि वो भी पितृसत्ता में डूबा हुआ है, but he's got a government job, तो उसका काम दिया है, वो ठीक है काम.
The priorities में I think वो चीज को address करना बहुत जरूरी है.
Yes, that is the job of the government, I'd say more. But the prohibition officer, like you said, he represents the court and the government.
Well, it is time to take the viewers' question. We have a question from Dr. Shivani Singh. She's a professor at MIT University. Let us hear what she has to ask.
In many tribes and communities in India, child marriage is a part of their culture and custom since ages. Does the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act override and supersede customary laws?
Ma'am, actually, there has just been a recent judgment, I think, in Madhya Pradesh.
Yes.
Where a young girl, a Muslim girl, was the case was taken to court. She had married a man who was almost twice her age,
right.
kuch 32 ya 38 saal ka.
Bilkul.
And the court said that because under the Muslim personal laws,
right.
and Muslim personal laws are not codified,
right.
It is allowed, customarily it is allowed that once they attain puberty, they are considered adults, they can get married. So they actually said that marriage is valid.
Right.
So I think that even for, if it is tribal communities, etc.,
right.
the same argument will be used, especially because in the law, precedent and bureaucracy, precedent is very important.
Right.
So now that one high court has ruled saying that we cannot interfere and the marriage continues to be valid,
right.
Probably with all tribal, anywhere where you say customary laws are not codified,
right.
and the custom does exist that children who have attained puberty can get married. Right. That law will, marriage cannot be interfered with by the court.
Absolutely.
But if it's the Hindu law, if it is laws that have been codified, I think both Christian and Hindu laws have been codified, then I think it will overrule the any customary law that may exist.
Absolutely. In fact, Supreme Court had in that 2018 case, which the case was that Justice Gogoi was presiding that bench, and Justice Sanjay Kaul was also along with him, and perhaps Justice Thomas as well. They had observed, though it was not a verdict per se, they had observed that the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act is a secular law, and it overrides the customary law. But it was just an observation. So you're absolutely right that different high courts have expressed different opinions about this, and customs are recognized as valid laws under Article 13(3) of the Constitution of India. So you're right that the customs have
precedence. It depends on what the court will say.
Yeah, what the court will say.
But normally courts do go by precedence. If one high court
has been long followed, and
it's very rare that another high court will say, no, we overturn it.
Absolutely.
Could be a chance, but I think as of now, as it stands, customary laws may be, allowed, permitted to get away with it, so to speak.
Right.
Which is also why we are saying that the Common Civil Code is so important.
Right. That's true. That's true. That we'll keep it for some other day, that discussion, but that's very relevant. Well, I wish we had more time for the discussion, but we have to respect the limits and confines of the time. Hence, we will have to conclude this episode. Thank you so much, Lalitha ji, for,
Thank you very much for
giving us extremely educative views on this show. Well, that's all we have in this edition of the program. You can send your feedback at sansad.tv@sansad.nic.in. You can also connect with us on various other social media platforms. Thank you so much for watching 75 Years, Laws That Shaped India. Goodbye and namaskar.